American Revolutionary War of 1776. A tangled web of conspiracy spans North America. In the war of survival, it does not matter what your creed, color, culture, or gender is. All stand together. Thomas Paine's common sense is held aloft in every rebel patriot's hand as they take up arms against the British Empire. But as the revolution has begun, something far more mysterious stirs. Agents of the occult entreat both the Continental Army and Loyalist Redcoats. Freemasons conspire in the city of brotherly love. Maryland is in the throes of a witch hunt by the Knights Templar. Amid the chaos, other grim fairy tales have emerged. Reports of witches have been seen in the Great Dismal Swamp. Indigenous Sachems say the devils called Manitou walk among the living. Flesh-gobbling ghouls have been tunneling beneath Boston. The Pine Barrens of New Jersey are haunted by what the locals call the Leeds Devil. And worse still, an ancient enemy whose name is never uttered aloud seeks to consume all, loyalists and rebels alike. In this game, most people have either chosen to deny the supernatural or rationalize it away. A rare few accept it for what it is and act. You are among those heroes and are destined for greatness or death. Welcome to Flames of Freedom, where your grim and perilous tale hangs in the balance.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, Mitch. How are you doing today?
I am doing swell, enjoying this lovely campfire that we have made for ourselves in the Flames of Freedom.
Yes. Gotta have the flame sound effects. But of course. Well, I, for one, am super duper excited that we are going to actually get to talk about this game now, because I feel like I've been sitting on it for so long. But before we get started with that, in case you don't know me, I'm Anna, also known as Nymeria941 on the internet. I've been working with the Flames of Freedom team for the past several months now as a development editor, accessibility consultant, and safety reader. So I will be talking a little bit more about that during our first look today, but that's me. If you've been around Encounter Roleplay, you've probably seen me stream some stuff with them before, but that's what I did specifically for the Flames of Freedom project.
And I am Mitchell. You can find me at Penny for a Tale on all the social medias. I got the rare opportunity to hop on at the tail end of this project and help out with some art direction for some of the new art that's coming out. So super excited about that. It has been hella fun. But yeah, just super excited to be partnering up with them and working, because this project is so cool, and the things that Anna has done is amazing. And I once I have my copy, it's not complete until I get her signature. So I can't wait for that to happen. It's gonna be awesome.
Oh, I'm definitely going to be toting mine around to conventions and all of that stuff, like a yearbook, just to gradually collect signatures of everybody when I actually meet them in real life. Yeah. I have a player's handbook for another RPG that you may have heard of that I do that with at cons, but definitely going to make that happen with Flames of Freedom.
Flames of Freedom, the yearbook. I dig
yes.
it. Yeah.
Class of 1776. So let's go ahead and get started with the big burning question on everybody's mind. What is Flames of Freedom? In case you have not heard, if you have, you might be aware of this already, but Flames of Freedom is an all-new tabletop role-playing game that is powered by the Zweihander engine. It is a D100 system where you are trying to roll underneath a target number and determine whether you succeed or fail at the thing you're trying to do. Unless you're me, because you just inevitably know that you're mostly going to fail. So this is powered by the same system that Zweihander uses. There are going to be some different rules, some things you might recognize as familiar if you've played Zweihander before. But an important thing to note about Flames of Freedom is that you do not need to have Zweihander in order to play this game. It is its own thing. The games themselves are 100% compatible with each other. You can use everything from Flames of Freedom with the Zweihander core rulebook and Mongosh and vice versa. But the idea is that they are all kind of coexisting in this same universe together. But Flames of Freedom is a standalone game all by itself, which is very, very cool. It is set during the American Revolutionary War, and it draws very heavily from the colonial Gothic genre, which is very, very exciting to me, because that's kind of what I studied when I was in school. Yeah. Yeah.
And we add some of the supernatural elements too. So a lot of horrific images, I'm sure, will kind of come across the screen. But really enticing and interesting, like old horrific lore during that time period. So you get to kind of explore those tales and see what lurks in the dark during that time, because you have humanity, which is an enemy because you're trying to take your freedom, and then you also have these horrific creatures who are kind of an enemy in of itself too. So two fronts. It's gonna be great.
Yes. There's also, as you saw in the trailer, the entire concept of the secret war and these shadowy, mysterious organizations that are trying to orchestrate stuff behind the scenes. But yeah. Mm-hmm. So speaking of some scary-ish artwork, Mitch, did you want to talk a little bit about your process as being like an art director and what that was like for working on this project?
Oh man, so art direction. It was really interesting continuing to work with the main artist who does everything in pencil, which is amazing. It's always a process that I've admired, being someone who has no talent for art whatsoever. But just the detail and kind of bringing up these provocative images, enticing images that kind of tell a story on in of itself. So one of the things I think I'm most proud of is kind of bringing in different types of people into the world, some of the art that you'll get to see in the final book. I myself am Hispanic, and having Hispanics being represented within the book and seeing other people represented as well, because in most media you're only getting one perspective, and so Flames of Freedom does so well in providing more of the bigger picture, because there was so much going on during that time, and it all didn't surround Mel Gibson and the Patriot, right? There's so much going on there. So
yes,
it was really cool.
So much going on there.
So much, right? Oh man, but yeah, it was cool just kind of writing the briefs and continuing to do so, and kind of weaving these stories through the artwork. And dear God, like just the artwork that was already done is so amazing, and just trying to live up to these amazing images you're seeing here. But that as I came in at the tail end, and really, Anna, you've been there since the beginning. You are the genesis, one of the genesis of this project, dealing with accessibility and stuff like that. So why were you brought on? Can you explain a little bit about that? And why did you say, yes, this project is what I want to do?
Absolutely. Well, I was actually originally brought onto this project because I had signed up to be a playtester back when we didn't even know what the real title of this was going to be. It was still called Project 1776. So TP Grant actually reached out to me and wanted to know if I was going to playtest, and I was like, sure. So we playtested some of the combat stuff. Me, him, and Doc Rimbo had an interesting time doing some dirty tricks with a demon in a cornfield, and then I joined this Zweihander Discord, reached out to Daniel, who's in the chat right now as ZweihanderRPG. He had mentioned some things about safety reading and accessibility for a lot of the sort of stress, fear, and terror mechanics, the things that we are going to use in the game in order to portray like the psychological toll that encountering war and dangerous supernatural creatures and other sorts of threats that you might find in Flames of Freedom begins to take on. So I reached out to him. I said, hey, here's a little bit of information about my background and the stuff that I do. I would love to do any sensitivity reading if you have openings for that, something like that. It's like, yeah, sure, let's discuss that. Got to talking, and he found out that I actually did my graduate fellowship in early American literature, gender and sexuality studies, and went, do you want to join us as a development editor too? And I was like, yeah. So basically that was how I joined the project. Was I just kind of geeked out about American history and DMs. But yeah, my background is from that like American history, American literature kind of thing, and I spent my graduate fellowship reading Puritan smut, and I still spend my time at parties trying to convince people that the Puritans were not as uptight as the stereotypical portrayal of them tends to be. They were actually a lot more complicated and complex. And colonial people had a very expansive view of gender and sexuality that was not always necessarily tied up in the party line of the European colonists at the time. So that was how I came onto the project. And now I'm here.
Yeah.
And it's great.
Yeah, and so we were talking about being a sensitivity reader and looking over some of the things, screen reader accessibility, and all these things. First off, what do these things mean? And second off, why are they so important?
Yeah, so this was something that I learned a lot about when I started volunteering with an organization that's called Dots RPG. Dots RPG is an org that is aiming to make tabletop RPGs accessible for players who are blind and visually impaired. So whether that's making things like Braille dice, or what I did, which was for a while when I was volunteering with them, I was an image limner, so I would write detailed descriptions of all of the artwork in RPG books, because that's an important part of the world building. And, you know, if you have difficulty seeing that, you don't want to miss out on the world building that the artwork does. So what I did was basically make as descriptive things as possible. So when I was brought on for this project, I had a couple of questions for the team about the kind of things that we were going to do to make this game as accessible as we can, because the TTRPG industry still has a really long way to go with this kind of stuff. So I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the accessibility features that we have here. The entire project follows the entire project follows the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which is a just sort of like industry standard protocol for how to design websites if you are using some type of technology like a screen reader, for instance, which is a program that will like read out what is on the screen to you, so that like if you are a blind player and you're using a screen reader to read the website or something like that, you have access to all that information, any metadata about images, links, all of that kind of thing. Our PDF is also going to be completely screen reader accessible and friendly. So that is something that I'm actually very proud of, because again, it's far from being the standard, and I really want more games to consider that like design purpose from the beginning, because it is far, far easier to begin if you design games with accessibility in mind than to go back and like correct a lack of accessibility after the fact.
Yeah.
Let me see. Oh yeah, we also have color deficiency friendly colors for anything that is color coded, and we have larger font types, larger print character sheets. We have an amazing, phenomenal layout artist who actually did an entire series on the Zweihander YouTube called Design Hander, that was about the process of coming up with the layout and trying to make this user-friendly, accessible to people with disabilities, and all of that kind of thing. So yeah, those are some of our accessibility features. Please tell people about them, because the more people know what these things mean, the more game designers and game development teams will take them as a priority, and it's very important.
Yeah, definitely. And especially like I know a game store owner who I went to conventions with, who has difficulty reading. So like having it be accessible via the PDFs, I guess writing to speech is really important to him. And so I'm excited that I'll get to send this over to him and be like, yes, you can enjoy it. It's easy. it's made for you to listen to, so which is awesome. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Another question I had beyond kind of the accessibility stuff is also, so gender and sexuality, and being the amazing historian that you are, how did you approach, and what do you know of kind of everyone else's approach to kind of incorporating more than the white male gaze perspective, which is common in media?
Yeah, so full disclosure, my background as a white queer person, I'm like one small part of the entire team that we have working on this. We have phenomenal Black and Indigenous designers, Latinx designers working on this as well. This is definitely like the most diverse team I've worked on for anything. So it was actually really interesting to get to do this in a collaborative way, right? Because like my background kind of focuses on trying to study people that were gender nonconforming, or things that, you know, we would now say like maybe transgender or non-binary or queer, even though that they didn't use those exact words to describe themselves at the time. So a lot of my background is basically like incorporated into the design of this book by trying to make sure that, you know, for instance, when we provide perspectives on what everyday life might be like, or what family structure might be like, that we use things like gender neutral language where it's applicable. We have a whole thing at the beginning of the book basically about how there have always been queer people, there have always been trans people, there have always been disabled people in history, even if they have not been a prominent part of recorded history because of reasons of systemic oppression and things like that. So we just really wanted to incorporate that into the writing of the book to just make it as organic as possible. So like we talk about, you know, one of the things that I worked on was in the Life During Wartime chapter, which is the player facing, kind of helps you role play your character thing. I talked a lot about gender nonconforming people in it, and I was like, hey, so here's how things were, you know, traditionally divided among men and women. And then, you know, we bring up people from actual history, such as Deborah Sampson, who was assigned female at birth and then adopted masculine clothing and a masculine name, fought in the Revolutionary War, and was actually the first person assigned female at birth to ever draw a veteran's pension from the United States government. I also brought in some work that I did with archives on the Public Universal Friend, who was another person assigned female at birth, but a Quaker who had some sort of like fever vision, something like that. And then when they recovered from their sickness, basically proclaimed that they had come back to life as a genderless spirit of God and wanted to, you know, exist in the colonies as this sort of prophet of a new faith, a new religion. And these are actual people from history. So to me, it was very important to include that, because it's one thing to say, yes, you know, queer people, gender nonconforming people, et cetera, have always existed throughout history. It's another thing to actually be able to go read about people that did. And I'm really grateful that like I got to incorporate that into this project.
Yeah, I mean that sounds really cool. I mean, especially like for people reading, and you can enjoy it as a role-playing book. You can also enjoy it to just kind of learn a little bit more about the time period, and just enjoy it in different facets. So we have some questions, and I will go ahead and read them off, and we can try to tackle them before we kind of hop onto a couple other topics. But Chaotic Story has said, does the game encourage players to learn or potentially alter historic events in the RPG? What do you think, Anna?
The short answer is yes. This is pretty grounded in American history, like, yes, it's our version of it because it is a role-playing game. So one of the things that Daniel, who is our like lead designer, talked about is this game being history down the middle. So we tried to, when designing and writing for it, thread this needle of like history as it was, and then history as we want to have it portrayed, and like in a way that makes everybody feel welcome and comfortable around the gaming table. Like, the goal of this game is in order for people to have fun role-playing characters in this time period, doing the grim and perilous thing without having to worry about, you know, oh, if I'm playing as a character who is from a marginalized group, I'm going to be pigeonholed into, you know, experiencing similar kind of oppression in that role-playing game environment. So we didn't want to do that. So in that sense, you know, it does definitely encourage players to learn about the time period, though. We have an amazing culture and ancestry system for determining like the cultural background that your character might have. We have lots of, you know, random tables that you roll on. We have an entire guide to the indigenous nations in the places came to be known as the 13 colonies, because indigenous ancestry is one of the options for playing the game. Potentially alter historical events in the RPG. Yes, because magic is real. You'll see that when we play on Encounter Roleplay tomorrow, the Sin Eater, which is the Quickstart adventure that I actually helped work on. It was really cool. What starts out as I'm not going to say any spoilers because I know some of the players are in the chat and I don't want to know, but suffice to say, what starts out as a simple sort of wartime task for the players to complete quickly turns a little bit more grimdark than maybe they'd expect from their everyday life.
Yeah, don't spoil it for me. Like, I gotta run that
I'm
tomorrow.
not gonna spoil a thing. No.
I want to know what happens.
I've been sitting on this for too long to spoil it now. No, you're good.
Yes. Yeah, so the other question we have from Dosiembro. I can never not say his name like that now.
I don't know why, but...
Yeah, ever since that one shot we did. They ask, I would love to hear about the Lynx's project in regard to Native Americans, people of color, slaves, etc., because they believe it should be standard too. So why don't you talk about the diverse cast and what the kind of project leads did to ensure that everyone had their perspective within the book?
So from my perspective, this is the most diverse team that I have gotten the chance to work on yet. We have people of a variety of like ethnicities and cultural backgrounds represented, and the team went to pretty great lengths in some cases to find sensitivity readers for anything that we have that, you know, depicts real life cultures and real world peoples, many of whom, you know, still have like the same like beliefs, traditions, practices, etc., carried down today, because that was something that we wanted to very much involve real people's lived experiences in. So I know that we've got Cypher of Tyr working a lot. Gabe James Game is working a lot on the sort of Black perspectives, and Gabe and I work together a lot on actually the way that the game deals with slavery, because what they wanted to avoid in the game was having a lot of these old tropes like slaver redemption arcs and things. That's just out the window. That's not on the table because that's not, you know, important or necessary to play this game. And, wanted to make sure that the real world players are comfortable and safe when we're playing a game that's supposed to be a lot of fun. Right now, I'm actually wrapping up my editorial pass on the Guide to Indigenous Nations, which is a phenomenal chapter of the book that was really spearheaded by Elijah, who is our lead Indigenous writer, sensitivity reader, another sort of jack of all trades. Elijah's been absolutely great to work with. He ended up organizing and coordinating, I think something like 30 different people from various different Indigenous tribes and nations to work on this chapter. And just going through it and getting to do an editorial pass on that was amazing, because not only do you learn a lot about the history and beliefs and cultures of the various indigenous groups in the Americas at this time, you also get perspectives on what it would be like to potentially portray a character of that ancestry in the game. And we do that in life during wartime as well, give you a couple like almost fictional prompts, sentences that'll be the kind of things that your character will be preoccupied with in the 13 colonies. So yeah.
And
I did want to mention that I know that our interviews with Gabe and Elijah about their experiences working on the project are up on the Kickstarter page. So if you go to the Kickstarter page and you go to updates, we're having sort of like daily posts where there's different interviews with the development team. Mine went up on Saturday. I talk a lot more about the accessibility features and why that's important to me in that interview. So if you're looking for, more specifics about that, they do go into detail in those interviews.
Yeah, and I know Kate Bullock's interview was put out today, I believe, and she did safety reading, among other things, for this project. So really interesting read. I encourage you to go check out that update. It's really good stuff, especially if you want to know a little bit more about the process. So Chaotic Story asks, would you ask players who wanted to know the accurate depiction of people or places could sign off as a group like green, yellow, red cards? So I guess that goes into the safety features of the game.
A safety tools question. Yeah, that's what I think you're asking. Let us know if we're interpreting that correctly in the chat, Chaotic Story. So did you have anything that you wanted to speak to with that first, with the artwork or any of the other things that you've worked on?
Oh, yeah. So for artwork, I thought it was really cool. Daniel set up a system where basically whenever I wrote something down, I would have a lot of the safety readers and stuff like that look over the writing that I've done for the art piece. And to see if, there's a couple things we wanted to do. We wanted to ensure that tropes aren't adhered to. Like you said before, we don't, usually during that time in media and entertainment, marginalized communities often have that, freeing arc, redemption arc. They rarely get to be the hero of the story that doesn't have anything to do with some of the problems that society was having at that time. And so in the writing for the art briefs, we ensured that, marginalized people had those epic moments where they're like the head of the troops, they're leading, they're in the front line for battle and stuff like that. And just trying to make sure that we had a diverse art so that when you looked at it, you could be like, hey, I know that I relate to that. That is really cool. So it was really cool having these three individuals kind of look over the writing and be like, maybe we should change this a little bit or be more specific about the body type for this, to try to get it just right. Because, we want people to look at the art and relate to it or for it to stir up emotions. That's always been my goal. But how about for you? I mean, you got to check out the safety materials and did a lot of development on the sensitivity stuff. So how was that?
I did, yes. Kate and I actually worked a lot on that together. She was absolutely phenomenal to work with on it. And she came up with an amazing safety tool system that's called Touch the Darkness that basically outlines the ways in which you as players, but also as characters, might interact with some of the actual, real life, but also the supernatural perils of the system and things like that. A lot of what I worked on with that was focusing on, from the disability perspective, making sure that, we avoided the common tropes of this person is the bad guy because they have some kind of facial disfigurement and they are the only person that looks like that. So for me, a lot of writing about, things like illnesses, injuries, other, just fact of life things that happen now and happen during this time period was that this isn't a story necessarily about overcoming a disability, because that's not really what this game is about. This game is about characters that go through real things and find ways to adapt and thrive. And it can be a story of resilience and creativity and all of the other cool things that people who are sick or disabled are really good at, thinking outside of the box of ways to solve problems. And then for the stress stress, fear, and terror. I almost said stress, horror, and trauma. I'm crossing Zweihander and Flames of Freedom wires in my brain right now. For that, we essentially wanted to allow players to explore some more of the like grim, dark aspects of this without infringing on real life fears that the players and such have. So we work together on that system to basically portray the kind of mental stress that your character might be under were a demon portal to open suddenly at their feet, and how they might respond to that. So that's something I'm actually really proud of how it turned out, and I think it's gonna set a good tone going forward. I'll also be putting a quick link in the chat to our preamble, which is up for free right now on DriveThruRPG. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about some of that philosophy that went into designing the game and the safety tools, we have a lot of reading about that as well. So yeah, go check that out too.
And I love it because safety materials and stuff like that are so important for a horror genre, especially when you're dealing with like whatever that is, right? That's like the scary images on the screen.
That fellow you just saw there, you'll find out whatever he is if you watch Sin Eater tomorrow. So check that out.
It's just going to be
sure.
tea and crumpets. It's going to be tea and crumpets. It's going to be a nice, easy adventure. Nothing bad's going to happen. I promise. Definitely.
Because tea in 1776 is not a polarizing topic at all, Mitch.
Exactly, right? It's super chill.
Tea is just nice,
fine.
Tepid, calming. Oh, yeah, no problem.
Definitely. I think I'm actually going to bring in some Sam Adams for the stream tomorrow in honor of Boston and such. But in any case, just safety materials help you create a horrifying game, and a game where people feel comfortable about horror and enjoying it. I had someone explain it to me that it's kind of like roller coasters, right? I'm terrified of roller coasters. I do not like getting on them. I don't like looking at them. I like shows when I go to a theme park. But roller coasters, right? When that bar comes over, you still have that stress and you're still scared, but you know at the end of the day that you are safe with those bars. And that's really what safety tools provide you. It's a way to feel safe despite kind of being put in what could be stressful situations, but that's never stressful in a way that you feel unsafe or uncomfortable, which I think is really cool, and something that horror GMs and horror writers for TTRPG community should be doing more, because the more you have them, the easier it is to kind of get to that place, because a roller coaster is only fun because of the bars. If it was out without the bars, no one would like roller coasters. And so in the same way as horror games. I get it. Kat agrees with the Sam Adams.
When you play too, yes. Yeah.
But feel free to ask other questions. I mean, this is a really cool game. Obviously compatible with the previous Zweihander books, with some amazing inclusivity writing, a diverse group of people who've kind of put this all together. And hey, funded in 76 minutes.
Which is still super cool.
Yeah, I just noticed how fortunate that was. That is truly interesting. But other than that, I mean, there's lots of stretch goals that are coming up that I'm sure everyone would like seeing. I mean, you talked about the custom dice, which are amazing and really cool. What other stuff potentially are we going to be able to see for the future of Flames of Freedom? You should talk about the things that Daniel said you should never talk about, and just do it. It's fine. I'm sure
the things that Daniel said I should never talk about. Oh, now you're gonna get me in trouble.
You're fine.
No,
he said it's fine.
No, there's a lot of really amazing stretch goals that we have. Mitch talked about the custom dice, and as I mentioned in the tunnel at the beginning of things, we have already unlocked an amazing perforated map of the 13 colonies that's going to be in the back of all the books, and some metal fortune misfortune tokens. So if you're familiar with the Zweihander system, it's the same concept, the tokens that you flip back and forth between the players, and then in Flames of Freedom, it's called the Historian. So the Historian is sort of the facilitator of the whole thing. So players, Historian, flip those fortune tokens back, and we have some really awesome metal coins for those. Future stretch goals, depending on how much this gets funded, there is a absolutely beautiful wooden dice vault that I'm really excited for. If we get up there at our funding goal, that will be free to all backers at the $75 level or higher. That's the way that the stretch goals work for this. There's not, you will be charged extra for stretch goals unlocked. It is just flat pledge for all of the unlocked stretch goals by the end of the campaign. For those of you that like big maps out there, some stretch goals are to make the maps bigger or make the map out of canvas or velvet as well, so that you can have a very nice tapestry-like map that you can spread out on your table as you play, or hang on a wall or something like that. There is also a metallic dice stretch goal option. Those are super beautiful and shiny. As well as a magnetic dice tray stretch goal, so that when you throw down your metallic dice, they don't dent a hole in your table. I haven't done that before. Totally
I'm really
fine.
excited about the pawns, which is one of the
the pawns
stretch goals that we have. Yeah, so if everyone's familiar with like the D&D Pathfinder pawns and everything, then we have the pawns of the professions as well as some other things. So if you want to throw out that creature that you liked in the book, you got it. Like, it's there, which makes putting stuff on it really cool. And combined with the map, being able to, like, I imagine doing troop movements and stuff like that, and, like, having that map out and have all these things occurring. Because I'm a big Hamilton fan, as I'm sure everyone else is. And just that experience of leading that revolution is really enticing to me.
Just wait until you read the book and see how many fun references have been snuck in there, low-key.
Yeah, I think there should definitely be a contest with who can collect the most Hamilton references in Flames of Freedom.
That'll keep y'all busy for a while.
Even in the art, I'm trying to include some stuff. But another thing that's really cool is there is a $15 or more pledge specifically for the marginalized community, which provides you a PDF if you are having a tough time, because 2020 has been 2020 between COVID and the economic strife that is currently going around over the world. Like, it's really cool to see a Kickstarter kind of have that there for you to act in good faith to be like, yeah, I can't afford the higher one, but I still want to support it, and I still want the PDF because I want to play it. So definitely check that out. And if there's anyone who's like struggling, like, please send them over to that, and it'll make your day. It makes my day to see this. So just having that there, and oh my God, the bookmarks, right? The bookmarks. I saw Daniel passing these things out. I saw him passing these things out at, I think, Gen Con or PAX Unplugged last year. And I was like, I need me some of these. So they'll have bookmarks specifically for Flames of Freedom that I'm sure people will see every now and then at conventions. But if you want them, if you don't want to chase or hunt Daniel down during a convention because he's fast, he's a hunter. As far as I know, difficult. But if you just want it, right, you can get that on the Kickstarter, which is going to be really cool. Ooh.
Looks like we got another question from Chaotic Story too. Is there a strong suggestion of storytelling being the main objective of the moderator, like sharing storytelling tips in the system? Yes. So the sort of GM, facilitator, moderator role is called the historian in Flames of Freedom. We thought that fit nicely with the theme, and also kind of more accurately represented the kind of relationship between the historian and players that this game has. It's less of a historian versus the players until everyone is destroyed, and it is much more of a collaborative exercise in storytelling and world building, and everyone working together to be grim and perilous and thirsty, should you so choose, because I had to say it at least once. So yes, in short, there's an entire historian facing section of the book. Also, our Life During Wartime and Guide to Indigenous Nations chapters, or articles as they're called. Sorry, crossing wires in the brain again. Articles as they're called have a lot of information for the historian on the way to create adventures and things like that. Something that I actually really love is our threats and hazards section. The way that works for the historian is a little bit different than your typical bestiary, because we had the amazing TK Johnston writing a bunch of flash fiction for all of the threats that the players can face. So you do have your typical, creature stats and, attacks that your opponents could do, but there's also just these very eerie, creepy, short little micro-fictions for every single threat or opponent that you can face in the system. And I get to read over a couple of those for some sensitivity purposes, and they're real good, y'all. They're real good. So yes,
I want to be able to read it.
I guess soon. Soon. So soon.
Oh man. But yeah, that's going to be really cool. So we got another question from the same person, I believe. Chaotic Story. So unique or non-familiar genre games can be a real challenge to get players engaged. I imagine props for storytelling would be welcomed. Mm-hmm. It's like a statement more than a question, but yeah, we get it. I have this, which I am super excited about using for a game of Flames of Freedom. Just nice old leathery journal here. I have been keeping it for a while, and yeah, I think it was specifically to run this game. So yeah, I definitely, I think Flames of Freedom, if you have ink, if you got all the material to write letters and such for, this game is definitely going to fill that need of your cursive, beautiful writing. Or in my case, typing it up and printing it and baking it in coffee to get a nice, rough, gritty feel to that paper. So I'm sure that we're going to have tips and everything on how to do all these things. But yeah, I'm really excited about the prop making for this because it's so accessible and so easy.
Yeah, it's definitely a game you could also play entirely theater of the mind, but I'm not gonna lie, maps on the table are a thing that I really enjoy. So
yeah, and capes. You can wear the capes too. They used to wear, the little
there are capes.
There's that. Yeah.
I know that Balrog earlier in the chat asked if I had skeletons in my closet, which I will neither confirm nor deny. But what I will confirm is the fact that I actually do have a powdered colonial wig in my closet so that I can wear it when I actually get to play this game that I've been working on.
Why aren't you wearing it now? I need to know.
Because this is the first look. It's not the look at everything. It's the teaser to get people excited.
Yeah, I think I might be inspired to just shave all my hair and turn it into one of those white powdered wigs.
Oh my goodness.
I think as a historian, I think that would be an amazing power move.
Yes.
Show my dedication.
I'm not going to say you should totally do it, but...
yeah. All right, so Arbelin says, was there anything that really surprised you / surprised you most about the setting? Good question. What do you think, Anna?
Ooh, anything that surprised me about the setting? I guess this is maybe more of a surprise from the design perspective, because we actually do have an entire section of the book on overland travel. travel was dangerous and expensive, arduous, time-consuming in this period, and I was actually very pleasantly surprised and impressed that that is reflected kind of in the game. And travel is not necessarily a means to kill time, or let's set a watch, decide if we're randomly attacked in the night, or the GM decides if we have to if we have to fight off whatever creature it is approaching the campfire or something. Like, travel is actually a really cool gameplay mechanic in this system. There are different roles. You have like your navigator, your scout, and your vehicle type person, the person that's like, are we going by carriage? Are we going by horses? How are we doing this? We have an entire section about all the different roadways and the things that you might encounter along them. There's some fun supernatural threats for just about every place you might want to go to in the 13 colonies. So travel in this system surprised me, because far from just being, guess we're gonna make time pass quickly, 3 weeks later we arrive at the city, it's actually like a really fun and important part of the game. And I love that it fits the way that travel worked historically too.
Yeah. It just reminds me of that video
How about
game.
You?
What's that video game called? The one where you traveled? Oh man, this is gonna bother me. Oregon Trail.
There are many video games. Ah, yes. Died of dysentery.
Exactly.
Lucky ones always die of dysentery.
Yeah, I know, right? I feel like as a kid, I was just letting a lot of people die in that game. Yeah. For me, it was finding out how much involved and how much of an impact people from Mexico and Hispanics in general had during that time period. I am in no way a history buff, and so when I was reading through the material, I was like, oh my gosh, like that is so cool. And I got to actually, I told Daniel if I could add my grandma's name to some of the random name generator stuff, her name being Concepcion Bustillos. And so I was like, oh man, this is so cool. And to see representation like that was surprising and really cool, because I was like, I know there were indigenous people and all sorts, but I did not anticipate Hispanics being present there. So I was like, oh man, this is really cool. So that was really surprising and super exciting for me. I was so happy. But you learn something new every day, which I love. Yeah, I think people are going to be surprised and learn a lot of different things just by reading the book, which is always fun.
There's so much folklore in it too. Like, that's the thing that, again, also really, I guess, surprised but impressed me about this book. Because, like, my family background is, everybody came from Ireland, Scotland, all that kind of thing. But my husband's family is Jewish, and I am also Jewish. And so, like, getting to read out, what the stat blocks were going to be for the golems and the iron golems and things like that, which are specifically like creatures from Jewish folklore and mythology, and actually getting to include that mythology in it instead of just having it be a golem is a thing made of rocks that comes to life and that's it. Like, I actually got to include some really cool folklore in with that as well, and that was a lot of fun to get to do.
Yeah, I think people are really going to enjoy the connections with reality that there is. This is not fantasy stuff that has been kind of built upon from old folklore. You get to see the folklore right there, and then you have to deal with it. Just like real life.
Just like real life. Werewolves all in your face. Ah!
Exactly, all the time. So Cat Who Walks asks, was there anything in particular that posed a great challenge for either one of you? For me, it was because I consume a lot of media, and between like all the films that they've done during that time period and recently Hamilton and stuff like that, there's Hamilton being the exception, there's not many perspectives other than the normal one that Hollywood portrays. And so trying to be inspired about what sort of things I would like in art, what I want people to see, was really difficult. Just because, just all the media has just been from one general perspective, and you really got to challenge yourself and be like, well, what did people really get involved in? What were they doing that time, and what would be cool to see? So that's always been a tough, and really it's been like the safety and sensitivity readers kind of going over the art briefs that I write and being like, well, why don't you look at this in a very different way? Which was super helpful, and I think definitely is going to make for some interesting pieces of art for everyone to enjoy. What about you?
So I think for me, probably the biggest challenge that I faced in working on this book as an editor was trying to kind of thread the needle between what we were designing and developing in terms of the Zweihander engine and the source material for this game. So Richard Iorio, who's the original game designer, developer, the creator of Colonial Gothic, which is our source manuscript for this. So yeah, I remember somebody in the chat had mentioned something about Colonial Gothic. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is very heavily based in that manuscript. So I think for me, the biggest challenge was trying to find that balance, right, between this sort of grim and perilous RPG of Zweihander and the very crunchy, almost academic historian RPG that was Colonial Gothic. I think trying to find a good synthesis of that and trying to figure out what a good balance between those two was, because there's just so much information about this time period. It's very easy to just go down a reading and research rabbit hole. And so for me, part of the challenging part of my job was time to step back and be like, okay, what absolutely needs to be here? What can I condense? What can I move around so we can get as many interesting, story hooks and adventure hooks and character ideas in here as we possibly can without making the book prohibitively large. So I mean, that was a challenge, but it was also something that I really enjoyed. Even some of the stuff that we ended up cutting from the final manuscript of the book, I'm excited to see, somewhere down the road it eventually maybe comes out as a supplement or as part of a different adventure or something like that. But I mean, it was very gratifying to know that none of that work was wasted, because all of it was just good material, and it's going to make for some really great games. So
yeah. And I know someone earlier was asking about the size of the book. I believe it's going to be about the same size as Zweihander.
Yeah, the Zweihander core rulebook is, I think, 678 pages. The Flames of Freedom book is going to be around the same size. Obviously, we don't have an exact page count for you at this time, but it'll be comparable to the Zweihander core rulebook.
Yeah, and definitely you're gonna want to grab the Kickstarter, because MSRP is $65. On Kickstarter, it is just $50, and for the amount of material that is in it, gonna be so good. You're gonna want it, and more so you can also, so much material, and you can grab some of the other supplemental material that will help you with Flames of Freedom. A lot of that stuff, especially the the book that talks about all the monsters and the ability to create them and stuff like that, that will help out in Flames of Freedom no matter what historian is using it. So definitely gonna get those deals. You don't have the votes.
Never gonna be president.
So Chaotic Story had another question, I think.
Yeah, would an angle to introduce players to the game to be to try and pick a potential ancestry line in their own family tree? Yeah, if I'm interpreting your question correctly, yes, that is something you could do. We have a variety of ancestry options and different things that you can choose from. The sort of classic grim and perilous method is you just randomly roll dice to determine all of your character stats and attributes and such like that. But that's totally up to you. Like if you decide, oh, I really want to play as a character from this particular cultural background, or I really want to play a character who's really elderly and has seen a lot of the world, or if in my case you like to play the weird like dark cultist diabolist type characters that are like, oh boy, here comes some demons for me to summon. I mean, yeah, it's definitely very customizable that way. Look, I didn't choose this. It just sort of appeared as an emergent pattern out of the way. I did want to ask you, though, real quick, Mitch, too, because one of the things that you can randomly roll on that I'm not going to when I play this for the first time is to determine what your professions are. So should we maybe talk a little bit about professions and like what they are, what makes them cool? What profession do you want to play as when you get to play this game first?
Oh man, that's like some of the most difficult questions you're throwing out to me right now, and I feel called out. Yeah, sure. We can talk about professions.
If it makes you feel better, I'm putting myself on blast here as well, because it's so hard to pick just a single one that I want to do first.
Cool. As long as you also feel called out. So how many professions are there? Because I know there's a lot. I'm trying to figure out what the exact count is.
It's around 80. I don't at the moment remember the final count. So this is the main thing that kind of determines your character's skills and abilities and the kind of progression that they will follow as you play the game. So these are all based off of actual historical professions that people living in the 13 colonies at the time had. We did so much work on making these awesome, and I cannot wait to see in action. Like as the actual plays of Sin Eater are coming out, I'm just like, ooh, how are they going to use this? How are they going to use that thing? It's so exciting. Yeah.
So what's your favorite profession? Or what are your favorite professions? I feel like it can't be a singular question.
I really I think the one that I want to play first is actually the Weaver. Because weaving cloth and making fabric is a huge part of, the industry of the 13 colonies. Before, we had like the Industrial Revolution and cloth was made in factories. This was something that people did in their homes, or people did in like these small cottage industries and stuff like that. And just the amount of work that went into producing fabric. I mean, like we're talking about a time where most people have one, maybe two sets of clothes because it just takes so long to make everything by hand. But it's also kind of nice. Everything's tailored to fit you exactly. What I love about the Weaver in this system, though, is that in addition to being somebody that gets to like work with fabric and textiles, which is, great, they also get to kind of look at the strands of fate through the threads on their loom, and they can sort of predict the future or possibly change the tide of current events with, that kind of like weaving the threads of fate. And I love that combination. If we're going for what we are in real life, though, I'm probably the bookkeeper, because the drawback of the bookkeeper is that your back constantly hurts from stooping over a desk. And I read that and I was like, wow, book. Rude, but also
made
accurate.
My back hurt.
I know.
Yeah. You're cracking.
What about you? What is your profession that you're excited for?
So for me, I think it's the Mariner. Partly because I really enjoyed the film, The Lighthouse, and I think that's as close as I'm going to get to that sort of feeling. And, the waters are creepy and dark things hide just below it. And I like that the profession picture has this guy just kind of throwing something out into the ocean. He's not having a good day on this little rowboat. So for me, that's like, I have that feeling sometimes. Another one that I really like, I think is I kind of piggyback between the actor and the writer. The actor just looks so sad, wearing his blonde wig over his short brown hair. So yeah, it's just that poor guy. He's like, in this economy. And then the writer, I don't know, it kind of looks like Daniel in my opinion. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but he just has like this inquisitive, I'm about to write the Flames of Freedom book. Let's do this type of to look to me, but I don't know. It's my thoughts on it.
I love it.
But yeah, there's so much between like just kind of these normal professions where you're like a smith or politician, but also like you could be a sin eater or a spiritualist. Sorry, spiritualist. They also have a sin eater too. Tailors, survivalist, surveyor, printer, medium, lawyer, guys. Alexander Hamilton, lawyer. Just gonna say that
the lawyer profession is really cool. I definitely want it. I really like the more like frontier based professions, because we definitely have some jobs that are a little bit more urban or a little bit more situated in cities. But for instance, the fur trapper is one that I am really interested to see how that plays, because I don't know, how many people are generally aware of this, but fur trapping was kind of this really messed up part of American history, and those fur trappers were ruthless. I mean, like, just there were entire populations of beavers hunted to extinction by fur trappers in like less than a decade during this period. And they were just sort of going really hard with trapping and such out on the frontier. And a lot of the more frontier or wilderness oriented professions too have some interesting ties into the supernatural, into the secret societies and the mysterious man dog that everybody whispers about in the night. So I do kind of like that into the supernatural aspects of the story, this being like, well, I've spent a lot of time out in the woods and I've seen things there that I can't explain, and you don't know what's coming. Like, early warning system fur trappers. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, like, they had a show come out called The Frontier, starring Jason Momoa, which just makes me think of that whole thing. And yeah, if I can make a character based on Jason Momoa as a fur trader, I think I would have accomplished most of my goals in my life. Oh, yeah. Let's take some more questions before we have to pop out of here. What we got next? All right, so I don't think there's going to be a rap battle supplement. I will try to push it, but thank you, Party Wipe Games. Chaotic Story says, so you can take the folklore and run with it, bordering on real versus magical folklore.
Absolutely.
Weave it together. I think. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say that ties into another a question that we got from Luis Logic. When it comes to the occult, supernatural elements in the game, what were some sources of inspiration? My line for this, coming from the background of somebody that studied this through the lens of what the Puritans believed and like their theological framework for understanding the world, is I described it as Cotton Mather's fever dream. He was this very flamboyant, serious, and intense Puritan preacher that literally wrote a sermon called Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, about how horrifying devils and demons are and how you have to like make sure that you are safe from the dark things that skulk around the earth. And he had a lot of really great imagery in his sermons, things of like, humanity being like a little spider that's dangling on a web above a candle, and one slip and you mess up and you fall into the flame. I mean, this guy was like writing Holy horror through his sermons so much. So yeah, anybody that's familiar with the kind of things surrounding the Salem witch trials, for instance, or some of the American cryptids, things like the Jersey Devil or Captain Kidd's treasure, any of those sort of American myths and legends. So some of that definitely was inspiration for the occult and the supernatural things in here.
Yeah.
Same with the secret societies too, like all of the go ahead.
No, I just like the fact that like the reality and history of it kind of weaved in with the folklore, made large and terrible, so that people can explore those horrific things. I like the idea of the horror preacher. I think that should be a real job in today.
Yeah.
We'll figure that
out. If you like the idea of a horror preacher and you're watching this now, you should definitely check out Sin Eater, because that's all I'm gonna say about that. But
just tea
if
and
that's
crumpets.
your thing, definitely check it out. Yes, nothing concerning at all, I'm sure.
Yeah, it'll just be another walk in the park. Nothing horrifying at all. But all right, we're coming to the end here. So if anyone has any final questions, feel free to pop it in. Did you have any other points that we need to cover here for people to go on over and purchase all of it? Trying to think here.
Yeah, just definitely encourage you to check out our preamble and our quick start adventure, which are currently available for free. If that's something that you're interested in the Kickstarter, but you are still you're on the fence or something like that, definitely go check that out. We also have a bunch of actual plays that are beginning on the Zweihander Twitch channel. Obviously, I've been hyping up the Sin Eater tomorrow on Encounter Roleplay, so if you'd like to see how the game plays in real time, definitely go give those resources a look over and check out the Kickstarter page as well. It's getting updated every day, sometimes multiple times a day, with like new funding goals and interviews with development team people. And I'm always around to talk about Zweihander. I really love it. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, definitely. And make sure to come tomorrow and check out Sin Eater. I promise you it is going to be amazing and horrific, which are some of my best favorite combinations. We got an amazing cast, and they're making their own characters, which is really cool. So if you have the quick start, you can kind of get a gist of how all that works and what stories you can start to make with this system in this amazing time. It is tomorrow at 6 p.m.
Eastern Time.
Yeah, there we go.
Yes.
So it's going to be a heck of a good time. So make sure to check it out. I'll be running that game. And so I got to ask, Anna, what parts did you input in concerning tomorrow's adventure, or can you even tell us?
Oh, I'll tell you a few things. I did the sort of dev editor pass over everything. So just making sure that all of the threats were appropriately threatening. Worked somewhat on the overall like flow and consistency of the story, the adventure. Did a little bit of editing to make life easier for the historian who's running it. And we also have recently divided a little bit. If you are an aspiring historian for this and you want to keep the spoilers of the adventure secret from your players so that they're surprised by the scariness, that's now available. So there's a section that's player focused and a section that's historian focused. A lot of what I did too was also just like making sure that we got some of the like religious horror type of things right and the folkloric things right, both in terms of history and what would be scary about this during that time. And I think that's all that I'm going to say for now, but I hope that you enjoyed running it, and I hope that everybody who's playing enjoys playing and watching. And
I hope they survive. It doesn't sound like they're going to, though.
There's always a chance that you don't make it out alive, but
I guess we'll find out tomorrow. So I'm super excited about that. Make sure to check that out. Sin Eater, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Encounter Roleplay. And Anna, why don't you go ahead and send us off, close us off.
Okay, just like outro close us off?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're
okay, cool. So yeah, thanks to everybody for coming out and watching this. Again, my name's Anna. I'm at Namiria941 most places on the internet. You can usually find me playing games on Encounter Roleplay, yelling about Zweihander, enjoying that kind of thing. I actually do have a Zweihander game coming up that I'm streaming on Chromatic Chimera It's called Bloody Portrait, and it takes place in Renaissance Florence with vampires. We might be meeting the Medicis this week, and I'm very excited. I play a very young, wide-eyed astrologer that just got to talk to her first demon last week, and she's very interested to learn more about these sort of dark things hiding in her patron's basement. In addition to that, I am GMing oh wait, never mind, sorry. I'm skipping ahead in months, never mind. So check out Bloody Portrait. It's on Chromatic Chimera on Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
Ooh. Yeah, I'm looking at it now and it looks amazing. The cast is dressed up with costumes. It looks really cool. Yes. So definitely check that out.
It's a very cosplay-focused group of people because we're all just extra like that.
Why be anything else? Truly. And yeah, I am Mitchell, Penny for a Tale. You'll find me here and over at the Cult channel and over at Penny for a Tale, doing some things like running Legend of the Five Rings is coming up the following Wednesday. My Axon Punk campaign is coming up the end of the month. And of course, Gordian Solutions for Cult is very much approaching, so that should be interesting. And yeah, this was super awesome, super chat, and thank you everyone for showing up and giving us your time, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your evening. Go revolt. Revolt away.
It is the dawn of the American Revolutionary War of 1776. A tangled web of conspiracy spans North America. In the war of survival, it does not matter what your creed, color, culture, or gender is. All stand together. Thomas Paine's common sense is held aloft in every rebel patriot's hand as they take up arms against the British Empire. But as the revolution has begun, something far more mysterious stirs. Agents of the occult intrigue both the Continental Army and Loyalist Redcoats. Freemasons conspire in the city of brotherly love. Maryland is in the throes of a witch hunt by the Knights Templar. Amid the chaos, other grim fairy tales have emerged. Reports of witches have been seen in the Great Dismal Swamp. Indigenous Sachems say the devils called Manitou walk among the living. Flesh-gobbling ghouls have been tunneling beneath Boston. The Pine Barrens of New Jersey are haunted by what the locals call the Leeds Devil. And worse still, an ancient enemy whose name is never uttered aloud seeks to consume all, loyalists and rebels alike. In this game, most people have either chosen to deny the supernatural or rationalize it away. A rare few accept it for what it is and act. You are among those heroes and are destined for greatness or death. Welcome to Flames of Freedom, where your grim and perilous tale hangs in the balance.